this video, I'm going to show you guys how to heel-toe downshift in Forza Horizon 5. Let's get into it. My name is Nikolai, and this is Joyshift. I like to film and build cool cars in Forza Horizon 5. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you can always be the first one to watch new videos. We're going to learn a whole lot about cars, we're going to customize them, we're going to drive them, and just have a lot of fun with them. Let's go ahead and jump into this video. A little bit of background information on downshifting. So there's really three things we're going to talk about here. You have your regular downshifting, you have rev match downshifting, and then you also have heel-toe downshifting. So essentially, regular downshifting is when you just put the clutch in, downshift the gear with the lever, and then release the clutch. But when you do rev match downshifting, you actually blip the throttle in between that. So as you've got the clutch in, you blip the throttle and at the same time change the gear, and then you release the clutch. That's rev match downshifting. Now when we talk about heel-toe downshifting, it's essentially that, but you'll be on the brakes at the same time. So you have to press all three pedals at the same time essentially, but you only have 2 feet. So how do we do this? And that's exactly what I'm going to show you guys in this video. So coming to a complete stop here, I can actually show you guys the mechanism behind this. So what I'm doing is essentially the top left of my foot is going to be on the brake, and then I'm going to move over my foot to have my heel actually touch the gas pedal. And essentially what you're doing here is pressing all three pedals at the same time with only 2 feet. So the mechanism is essentially as you're braking the car, like you're pressing the brakes, you're going into a corner and you want to downshift, you need to blip the throttle in order to rev match it. So what you're doing is you're able to stay on the brakes and you're also able to downshift. So 3 pedals at the same time with only 2 feet. It's a really interesting concept, but let's go and take it into action so I can show you guys exactly how this looks when you're driving the car. On my YouTube channel, I have a very thorough explanation video going over how to drive manual with clutch in Forza Horizon 5. So please do watch that video first if you're not familiar with manual with clutch in the game. It's definitely going to be super helpful for this, and it's definitely a prerequisite that you need to know in order to actually rev match downshift. So now let's go and get into it. Now, a good car I like for this is just about any Porsche, because Porsches, I find their ratios, their gearbox, everything just feels very good. It's smooth, it's easy to learn, and it's also just very nice to drive as well. But you can do this just about in any car, and I'll show you guys you can do this in slow cars, fast cars, everything's, you know, doable with it. As long as it's got a manual transmission, you can totally do it. So the concept behind rev match downshifting here that we're going to kind of look over is when you're actually driving the car spirited, you're definitely going to want to be really keeping your RPMs up top, because the higher they are, really, I mean, it depends on the car, but a lot of cars, like especially the 8.6, a car like that keeps a lot of torque at the top. It really doesn't make a lot of torque at the bottom. So for a car like that, it's really nice to be able to rev match downshift so you can stay in the high RPMs going into the corner, because as you press the brake, if you just hold the gear, your RPMs are just going to keep falling. So you want to make sure that you're actually staying high up in the RPMs. This essentially happens all simultaneously at the same time, but when we really break it down into steps, they are all in steps. It just looks like it all happens at the same time. So essentially what you're doing is first, when you go into the corner, you press the brake. Then once you're on the brake, you're going to put the clutch in, shift the gear, and at the same time that you're shifting the gear, you're going to blip the throttle, and then you're going to release the clutch once you've blipped the throttle. It all happens very quickly, and you can do this slower, smoother, depending on how you want to drive, but that's essentially the concept behind it. So you can see as I'm driving it, I'm going into the corner, and depending on which car you drive, you know, a faster car, you're going to need to downshift more because you're going through more gears, and it's just got a lot more power to it. But essentially, it's good to learn on a lower horsepower car, because once you can really master it, you can do it just on about any car, and it's always good to learn. You're able to really control the car, and you also want to be smooth, because we can also get into weight transfer here where you don't want to be like fully on the brake. You know, you want to definitely be smooth with it. You don't want to have full brake all the time. You want to just be on the brake slightly so you can go into the corner with some braking, but you can also downshift. So it's really good to know. Now let's talk about when to heel-toe downshift. So this concept is interesting because it all depends on how you want to drive, right? You can heel-toe downshift just at about any RPM. You don't want to be too low that it's like going to stall out, but at the same time, you don't want to be too high because you don't want to go past your red line. You can't really do that in Forza, but definitely in real life you could do that. So you don't want to do that in the game either. It all comes down to knowing the RPMs of your car. You don't want to downshift to the point where you're too low that you're not really going to have anything happening and you're just going to stall out, but you also don't want to be at the point where you're going past red line or even to red line. You really want to stay kind of in the middle the whole time, and that's really going to be the sweet spot to it. And you can just see as I'm driving kind of where I decide to downshift, when I decide to upshift. It's all personal preference and depending on how you're going to drive the car. But really, you just want to kind of stay in the middle, have a little bit of RPM left that you're not redlining it, obviously, when you're downshifting, because you need some room to play with once you pull out of the corner. But otherwise, that's really all there is to it. If you guys enjoyed the video and want to see many more just like it, please do make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.